Welcome to this special session in which we will present and discuss the top findings of BNamericas 2023 Electric Power Survey for Latin America, which was carried out with support from Deloitte and Chilean Renewable Energy Association, ACERA. My name is Michael Place. I am the Regional Energy Editor at BNamericas. Today we will spend a few minutes looking at the results of the survey on key questions for the industry, and then have a discussion with Kishi Harisaki, CTO LATAM Head of Business 4.0 and Industry Solutions at Tata Consultancy Services. The full results of the survey can be found on the BNamericas platform in the report Electric Power Survey 2023 Energy Transitions Whets Appetites. The main takeaway from BNamericas 2023 Electric Power Survey is that despite myriad challenges, Latin America holds a wealth of energy transition opportunities. Overall, 74% of respondents had a positive or very positive view on the 12-month business outlook for the sector, with 20% taking a neutral stance. Only 6% had a negative or very negative view. The results represent a strong improvement over the 53% of respondents who in last year's survey said the 12-month business outlook for the sector was better than that seen before the onset of COVID-19. One of the key industry concerns since the pandemic has been the ongoing supply chain crisis that has caused project delays and driven up costs. To this end, the outlook for the next 12 months remains uncertain. 89% of the survey's respondents said disruptions and shortages continue, while 11% said the supply chain crisis was over. But what is driving investment? Some 60% of all respondents are planning to increase overall spending this year. Decarbonisation and initiatives related to the energy transition are undoubtedly the underlying focus of investments. Overall, 57% of respondents planned an increase or significant increase in decarbonisation spending over the next 12 months, up from 49% in the 2022 survey. In contrast, just 5% of respondents projected a decrease in decarbonisation spending over the period, while 26% said decarbonisation plans were unchanged. Regulatory changes can quickly make a sector or country more attractive, and vice versa. Legally mandated renewables targets, for example, send out clear signals concerning demand for new capacity. Conversely, a sudden change in the rules of the game, especially if negative for sector players, can impact investment. According to the survey, 56% of respondents expect their organisation to be impacted by regulatory changes over the next 12 months. Just over 32% indicated the opposite, while 11% said they were unsure. A central theme in comments was emissions controls, power rates, long-term planning, and the likes of carbon taxes and permitting. A large percentage of investments will continue flowing toward new non-conventional renewable energy capacity, although there was slightly less enthusiasm about these projects from the survey's participants compared to last year. Some 58% of respondents said solar power would be the fastest growing electricity generation source over the next 5 years, down from 66% in 2022. Meanwhile, 18% said wind power would expand most rapidly over the period compared to 19% in 2022. The number of respondents who chose natural gas as the fastest growing power generation source jumped to 9% from 5% last year. Meanwhile, the emerging segments flashing brightest on the radar of investors are energy storage, clean hydrogen, distributed generation, backup generation infrastructure, advanced metering, and offshore wind, according to the survey. While optimism is palpable, the sector is not without its challenges. Political, legal, or country risk remain the biggest threat to the sector over the next 12 months in the eyes of the survey's participants. However, the number of respondents that chose this as the #1 pitfall for electric power investors in Latin America fell to 48% from 70% last year. Among generators, this improvement was even more pronounced, dropping from 73% of responses a year ago to 31% in the 2023 survey. Other concerns cited by the survey's participants included regulatory and permitting barriers, poor government planning, weak prices, and access to capital. The survey, which was conducted during July and had 211 respondents, was carried out in partnership with Deloitte and with the support of the Chilean Renewable Energy and Storage Association, ACERA. We're now going to be joined by Kishi Harasaki, the Latin America Head of Business and Industry Solutions at Tata Consultancy Services. Kishi, good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, one of the key takeaways of the survey was that despite its challenges, Latin America holds a number of opportunities, a plethora of opportunities, particularly related to the energy transition. What, in your view, Kishi, is or are some of the major opportunities, I guess the low-hanging fruit, if we could put it that way, for companies looking to invest in the region?
Yeah, definitely investment in wind power generation, solar plants, hydroelectric power plants are on the rise. Okay, so it is attracting a heavy foreign investment, and at the same time, the government is also improving the legal framework. For example, to implement the free market for power consumers or for distributed generation. So I see those aspects, and there are countries that are setting up goals, like in Mexico, by 2024, 35% of their dependence on renewables will be there. And in Argentina, they want to set up the goal of the dependency on renewable to be 20% by 2025. So governments are also joining this effort and helping this journey of the decarbonization as well.
There's certainly a lot of momentum in terms of the energy transition, as you mentioned, all across the region. According to the survey, 56% of respondents expect their organization to be impacted by regulatory changes over the next 12 months. Just over 32% of those, a little under a third, indicated the opposite, while 11% said they were unsure. Kishi, according to your company and yourself, what regulatory changes do you expect to see in Latin America, and what do you think the implications might be for those changes?
Yeah, there are countries that will be affected by inflation, like Mexico and Colombia. In some others, there will be appetite from the government to intervene, like in Colombia and Mexico. And in Brazil, we see some of the changes happening that will serve as a model to other countries as well. For example, for distributed generation. For example, especially for the free market for power consumers. And this is a big change. Essentially, by the way, the industrial consumers have already migrated to this model. So they already have this freedom to pick up the power providers with better pricing and conditions. And this process is ongoing in the country. The regulation is being updated, and it will eventually achieve the end power consumers, end users, which means that end consumers could switch their vendors, power providers, just like we switch internet service providers these days. It means that current model is based on geographic monopoly. So it is a very static model. So in the future, we'll be able to procure vendors from other regions. And from operational perspective, it means that there will be a huge change that is needed in the country. So it will help consumer select the best vendor or the best source. When you talk about power source, we can see power generation company that relies on thermoelectrical generation plants, others on renewable energies. So then, because of the decarbonization initiatives many companies are pursuing, they can procure from those vendors, and they can be located in different areas. For example, where there are more availability of power, sunlight, or wind availability. So those farms can be located in different regions, and that means that it will need to change the operational structure of the country. So the national grid needs to be integrated. So different power generation companies with different sources, whether it's hydroelectric, thermal, or solar or wind power plants, they will be all integrated in a single grid. And the consumers will be all around the country, and they need to be integrated, need to be orchestrated. So in addition to that, this distributed generation is also taking place, where consumers can generate power as well, which means that another aspect that we need to also take into account is that the operation of this new integrated national grid is more complicated. I can mention a knowledge of gas pipeline network where you need to pump gas into the system the exact amount that will be consumed. Otherwise, the pressure would build up and you can cause explosions, for example. Or the opposite, you can have a scenario where you would be pumping less gas than needed, and then the consumers would not have reliable, steady supply of gas. So similarly, in power distribution, there will be the similar effect when you need to have a balance between the supply and demand that needs to be orchestrated. If more power needed, then more power should be generated. So this balance, and especially this is challenging when we have a scenario where distributed generation is also part of this landscape. So it means that not only you don't know much how the consumers would behave, which is dependent, for example, on weather. If it is too hot, you're gonna turn on the air conditioner. If it is too cold, you're gonna turn on the heater. So there will be influence of the weather. There will be, for example, the freedom of the users. They can switch vendors, so there will be interference of this demand as well. And also, when you have a distributed generation, and if it is the solar power on top of on the roof of the houses, then even the availability of the sun is not steady along the day. If a cloud goes by, certainly there is a little fluctuation. So all these things need to be managed accordingly. So that would be the how regulation is being changing, how the consumers, industrial consumers, end user consumers will be affected by these changes that's coming up. That we see also on the survey that they see this increase in the investment as well, and the influence or impact of the regulation changes as well.
Excellent. Very, very interesting response. And I think, as you mentioned, it's all about flexibility and guaranteeing a right balance between supply and demand. And I think there's this battle all around the region to find a balance between ensuring profitability for investors, but also guaranteeing, low prices for users and guaranteeing reliability. So very interesting points that you make, and the regulatory challenge is a major one for the entire region, as you mentioned. You mentioned natural gas, and my next question will relate to that topic. While a vast majority of respondents to the survey predicted that solar and wind power would remain the fastest growing energy sources over the next 5 years, there was a reduction in the percentage of participants that believed this would be the case. Meanwhile, the number of respondents that chose natural gas as the fastest growing generation source almost doubled compared to last year. What do you believe, or why do you believe this is the case?
Yeah, I believe because of the scenario right now, where we have Mexico and Argentina with roughly 55% of dependency on natural gas. Plus, in Argentina, we have the second largest reserve natural gas, unconventional gas reserves in the world. And we also know that by 2030, the new regulation around carbon neutrality will be implemented in some countries. And we also know that if that happens by 2030, around 70% of the reserves of natural gas in Latin America will be affected. So certainly this is a trend for countries that have been heavily invested in assets in thermoelectric power plants, and that they need to transition to renewable energy in the future. So, and plus some countries they have natural reserve. So they are taking advantage of this time window before the new regulation around carbon neutrality takes place. I believe that's the impact we see on the survey.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Gas, I guess, is perceived to be the transition fuel, isn't it? The bridge fuel towards the clean energy transition, the race to net zero, so to speak. The survey's respondents said the most attractive emerging business segments include energy storage, clean hydrogen, distributed generation, backup generation plants, advanced metering infrastructure, and offshore wind. Do you agree with this assessment? Is
Exactly.
is there an emerging business segment that you consider key to helping unlock the clean energy potential of Latin America?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think particularly some of them are already being implemented. For example, we see this advanced metering infrastructure. Why this is needed? Because of the regulation changes that will be free market for power consumers. So you need to have this billing system more precise at the individual level. If they switch vendors, you need to also register that. On the other hand, for industrial consumers, you would have the ability to manage multiple sources of gas suppliers or power suppliers. So, for example, if your regular power supplier is charging premium price at the peak hours, maybe you would hire another vendor just to supply during the peak hour with a lower rate. So this advanced meter infrastructure can have this ability to manage and switch according to your needs, and you can have other sources as well that you will be playing around to better manage your options, the availability. Okay, so that's what I see as the most important thing. Second aspect I see is the distributed generation that I also mentioned, because in many, especially end user consumers, they are building this rooftop solar panels because of the cost is going down, because of the massive adoption. So this is becoming a reality as well. So one of the methods that is very popular is to actually during the day taking the same sunlight and sending back this power to the vendor, and so you would have credits, and during night you would take advantage of this power. And this arrangement is a nice way of minimizing the complexity from user perspective. Otherwise, if it is off-grid, for example, you would have a battery system, for example. So you would simplify the model. So it's the new model is coming in a very good format that is very easy to scale up. So since the complexity is lower, the consumers can implement at a large scale. So those aspects advanced metering infrastructure and the distributed generation, I see the ones that is taking these implementation measures faster and faster.
Fantastic, Kishi. I think, as you mentioned, so many opportunities, so many challenges for the region in terms of the energy transition and investments in general in the electric power sector. So that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. Thank you very much, Kishi and TCS for being a part of this discussion. Thank you to everyone watching. I remind our subscribers that they can read the complete report with results of the 2023 Electric Power Survey on our platform. And for those who are not yet BNamericas subscribers, I invite you to visit BNamericas.com, where you will find a variety of data, news, and reports on energy and other sectors in Latin America. Thank you again, Kishi. Have a good day, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. See you.